In today's video, I'm going to talk about a lesser known problem that comes with having mental health issues, which is simply not looking for help or going for therapy. So this is something that happened to me and I did for so many years despite having multiple mental health issues where I just didn't look for help. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why we avoid going for therapy and exactly what you need to do to overcome this problem. Hi and welcome back to Mental Health Power. So as I mentioned in my previous videos where I said I went for therapy 6 times in my life, what I didn't mention at all was what I had to do just to get to the stage of accepting that I needed to go for therapy. And so I'm going to share with you 6 reasons for why I believe so many of us avoid going for therapy, even though it is the solution, or at least the beginning of the solution to resolving mental health problems. And so the first thing is that it's just down to a lack of self-awareness. So I basically, and I believe this happens for many other people too, we can be so used to the problems that we have, such as psychological, emotional, physical health problems, that we don't actually see the depth of how big of a problem that it actually is. So you could say that we get stuck in an uncomfortable comfort zone. So we're okay with the state of being uncomfortable to that extent, because I guess our mind and our bodies do adapt to discomfort, which is a good thing in the fact that it helps us to survive, but it's also a bad thing because it means that we can often not want to go beyond that to recover. And so for me, it was simply down to, one of the main reasons was just down to a lack of self-awareness. I'm not really fully seeing the picture, not understanding how this was fully impacting myself and other people like my family around me. So I believe this is something that a lot of people are going through right now, because what we don't see is that it's slowly but surely gradually destroying us. So we don't see every day any major changes, but if we look back a year, 2 years, even sometimes just months in the past, then we can start to see actually we are slipping psychologically, emotionally and physically. But because it's so small every day and we're so used to it, we don't see that our comfort zone is gradually closing in on us because we're so used to it and we see it every day. The second reason why we often avoid going for therapy is because it makes us feel vulnerable. And so the idea of going somewhere and talking to a stranger and telling them all the things that make us feel vulnerable can often also be seen as a weakness to some people. And this is something I went through where, although at the time, because I lacked so much self-awareness, I didn't realize this was happening, where unconsciously there's a part of us that thinks if we go for therapy, it's like we're admitting there's something wrong with us, or we're admitting that we're broken or something like that. And of course, this is a very distorted way of seeing ourselves, and ultimately it stems from some other issues which I'll talk about in the next thing. So the other issue is that when we go for therapy, we know we're going to have to speak about things that are going to make us feel temporarily worse. And so if we've gone through so many experiences such as psychological, emotional issues, that's already painful. So this idea that I'm going to have to go through even more discomfort and pain, that is very off-putting for a lot of people, and that's understandable. What we need to understand is that we have to go through that period to release all the things that are trapped inside of us, all the trapped emotions, suppressed memories, that kind of thing. We need to bring them up, otherwise they are slowly destroying us over time. And so this links into the third part as to why we avoid going for therapy. And that's because if we've had multiple mental health issues, or we've had periods of our life of lots of stress, which are creating mental health issues, we can actually start to develop, or we often do develop, low self-worth, low self-esteem. So you imagine you have someone who has very low self-esteem because they've had really bad experiences for so long. Then somebody says you should go for therapy. How do you think that can be taken? So of course it's normal for somebody to recommend somebody to go and get help because they want them to get better. But if you have very low self-esteem because of having so many negative experiences which have created these mental health issues, this almost becomes just like another thing to lower self-esteem. So the idea, I guess it links back to the idea of vulnerability, where if we're feeling already that we have low self-esteem, so we're feeling bad about ourselves to begin with, then somebody essentially is almost telling us, yes, you've got something wrong with you, therefore go and get help. That's the distorted interpretation we can have if we have very low self-worth. What often happens is then it's almost like a part of us will self-sabotage and will prevent us from actually experiencing that. So in one way it can be seen as self-sabotage because the exact thing we need to recover is we are unconsciously moving ourselves away from it. But also in a way it's not self-sabotage because that part of us is trying to protect us from extra pain. But what we need to understand is that, yes, we may have to go through a period of discomfort in therapy, but we have to go through that to be able to actually recover so that we don't have a life of discomfort. So you could see it as we need to go through that short-term pain and discomfort to then actually build up a life of freedom and joy. So it's about going through the short-term discomfort to get the long-term gains. That is the best way of seeing it. So building up your self-worth is one of the best things you can do, because this then stops us feeling vulnerable. And it means when somebody does suggest something like going for help, going for therapy, it's not interpreted as, oh, I'm weak, oh, I can't do something. And so the fourth reason as to why we avoid going for therapy, and I sort of mentioned this in the previous one, which is that we can get just so comfortable in this comfort zone that we have, that what happens is that we can get so comfortable that we can't actually even imagine not having mental health issues. We can't even imagine not having problems in our lives. So what can happen is we end up forming an identity around the mental health issues, around our problems, around our discomfort. Sometimes we can form friendships and communities entirely based around our problems. So when those problems are gone, what's left? So for some people this is terrifying. So the comfort zone is not just about the problems that exist externally, but internally as well. So we can get used to just having these negative feelings, that the actual concept of being free can be scary, because what can happen is if we've had past experiences where we've had a very good life, lots of good things, and then something took it away from us, again, going back to this idea of self-sabotage, a part of us can almost think, but if I do get what I want, what if it's taken away from me? And because it doesn't want you to experience that pain again, we end up self-sabotaging and finding ways to convince ourselves we don't need to go for therapy, as in to stay in that comfort zone, the uncomfortable comfort zone. And the fifth reason for why we avoid going for therapy is because we can be just really afraid of confronting these suppressed emotions and repressed memories. And this is really because part of us is self-blaming. So we're partly blaming ourselves unintentionally, unconsciously, for the problems we're experiencing right now. And this is something you're going through, remember that it's not your fault. A lot of these issues are developed in childhood, in our teenage years, where we didn't have the control over our lives that we would have liked to. So it's not our fault at all, but for various reasons I mentioned in my other videos, where we end up actually blaming ourselves. And so because of this, we can be afraid to go for therapy and for these past memories, past traumas to come back, because part of us thinks it's our fault. And so by having these issues come up again, let's say talking to a therapist and them exploring our past, and let's say we start feeling these painful emotions come up, we can often, without realizing, think that it's our fault. So we end up fearing that our worst fears about ourselves could be confirmed. Because if we have low self-worth, if we've been blaming ourselves for so long, we don't want that distorted truth to be confirmed. So we'll avoid going for therapy. So of course it's a distorted truth. It's not based on any facts at all. It's based on old beliefs, what we picked up as kids, as teenagers, or even in adulthood because of really bad experiences. So just remember that self-blame achieves nothing. Blaming ourselves for things literally doesn't achieve anything. All it does is makes us feel worse. That's it. And I know it's easy to say when you're on the other side, but I'm saying it to you for somebody who has gone through it, that self-blame doesn't create any solutions. The solution is accepting how you feel, realizing that you do need assistance to actually recover from these issues and going for help. And this links into the sixth reason. Did I do that right? No, I did that wrong. This links into the sixth reason for why we avoid going for therapy. And that's because sometimes, and this does lead from the self-blame, which is sometimes we can think that it's down to us to resolve the problem. So we can blame ourselves so much that we think only we can resolve the problem, that it's our problem, we created it, so therefore we must solve it. But we can't do everything on our own. We rely on other people for so many things. And so if you haven't resolved the problem on your own and it's been a long, long time, it is probably about time that you looked for other solutions to get help. And so part of this is that sometimes we can think that if we can't resolve something on our own and we need help, that can make us feel vulnerable and that can make us feel weak, which links into self-worth again. From these 6 reasons, they all pretty much boil down to really 2 things, which is low self-worth and self-esteem, which is essentially having a lack of self-love, and lack of self-awareness. So really what you need to do, and I've done a video on self-awareness, I'll put a link up here, going through a practice of gaining self-awareness will really show you exactly the true state of your life and your internal health, so psychological, emotional health. So you can really see that if you don't start getting help now, then it's not that you remain stuck in the same way. We actually get worse over time. Things deteriorate unless we are actively doing things to maintain our psychological, emotional, and physical health. So self-awareness is the first thing to focus on. So I can see myself doing a video on how to build up self-esteem and self-worth, but there are so many different resources on this online, there are so many books on it. But essentially, really simple way to look at it, you can tell how much self-worth and self-love you have. And again, it's not your fault if this is something that we're lacking. This is something everyone has to learn. You can tell how much self-love and self-worth you have by seeing yourself as 2 people. I've mentioned this in other videos. So see yourself as 2 people. You're the one who gives yourself experiences and the one who receives experiences. So are you treating yourself the way you want to be treated? And are you treating yourself like you would your best friend, for example? So imagine there's you and there's a clone of you. And when you're choosing to not do something, you're not giving yourself that experience. So imagine let's say you had a very close friend, and let's say you've made suggestions to them. Oh yeah, you should I can help you with this. We can go and get help for you. But then another time you say, no, I'm not going to give you that help. I'm going to take that away from you. That is how to tell how you're treating yourself. So if you're making decisions and you wouldn't tell that to your closest friend, or if you wouldn't take that away from your closest friend, that's something to think about how you are treating yourself. So those are the 6 reasons for why people avoid going for therapy. I'm sure there are plenty more, but these were 6 that really applied to me over many years. And the only reason why I ended up going really is because I had family basically really pointing out all of the things I couldn't see. So really pay attention to what others are saying about you. And if you notice, you know what, there are patterns in what people are saying to me, and there are patterns in the way people are behaving towards me. That's a clear indication that it's not just somebody saying it because it's their perspective, but there is an actual truth to it. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Comment below if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.